We hunt for treasure, stacking them in piles. Hustling hard, making deals all day. Flipping finds, turning profit our way. Pure Hustle Podcast guides our quest. Learning tricks to be the best. On eBay we make our name. Reselling dreams, winning the game. Pure Hustle Podcast guides our quest. Learning tricks to be the best. On eBay we make our name. Reselling dreams, winning the game.
Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 449. 449, in case you're wondering.
Which is crazy because I remember when we did episode 49 and you were so excited because you were going to do like a special 49ers episode.
That's right.
And here we are.
The real ones remember that one.
400 episodes later. And I'm super excited because once again, we are live. So thank you to all of you who are with us right now watching on YouTube as we are live. I think we're also streaming to X and to Facebook as well. So thank you for all of you who are watching. Again, if you are listening on the podcast side, this is airing. You're listening to a little bit later, right? So make sure to come on over to YouTube, hit the like, subscribe, bell notification. That way, if we go live and you want to catch us and interact in the comments, you can do that as well.
Yeah, and you know, I'm always pumped with all the people that join us on the live, like Upstate Pickers here. What's going on? How are you? Zozo Pug has always been here in our live, and we sometimes we get Wayne from K-Way Shop, we get others. So thankful for all of you, especially the fact that Mike and I have gone through different seasons of podcasts. You mentioned episode 49. Like we were in a totally different building, right? Totally different location. Then we moved locations.
I think this is our fourth setup since those days. So yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, today we're talking about something that's actually really important, and it kind of goes along with some of the things we've talked about a little bit when we've done book reviews. And I think we're highly considering bringing back some book reviews, maybe test running a book here in the summer. So we're excited about that. But this is a concept that is really important, and that's how do you crush the enemy, right? Like how do you stomp out that competition on eBay or on whatever platform you're selling on, so that you get the profit and they don't? Because really, it's reselling is a numbers game. And you've got to make sure that you're making the numbers and it's not your competition. And a lot of times resellers get worried when new resellers are joining. Hey, why are you guys sharing information? This is just going to bring more people in. It's going to be competition. Well, the reality is, if you're listening to Pure Hustle Podcast, you're getting tips and tricks and tools that you need in order to not just be average, not just be semi-successful on the platform, but to really stand out, to get the unfair advantage wherever you can, and to beat the competition.
So my question is, are we creating problems for ourselves?
By teaching others? No, I mean, really, I don't think so. Especially because the idea, and again, we are going to get people in our comments, I can almost guarantee it, who make comments like, you guys are just ruining it for everybody else. But again, we are not like a group that's just sharing like a cook group, all the secrets. What we're talking about oftentimes is we're very unique. Every reseller who listens to us has their own story, but a lot of the stuff that we talk about is just general reselling, specifically with things like being a garage sale reseller. Now, you're not going to be able to just give away the secret. I do have a store that I don't publish because I don't want people to see a couple of the niches that I'm in, some of the like good categories that I've been able to find, things that I'm looking for on Facebook Marketplace. So there are certain things that we don't share. But as far as the tips and tricks, it's not going to worry me if somebody gets into jewelry and they're using these tips and tricks, because I don't sell in that field, right? So I'm not worried about competition in that sense.
Yeah, 100% agree. And even still, even if people figure out what I'm selling, right, it's fine, because there's so much out there, right? There's so many buyers. There's so many people that are looking for the same thing. So it's all good. So the first part here about beating the competition is you kind of have to understand. We're talking about eBay specifically. You have to understand eBay. right? If you're brand new, you're wondering like, okay, all I have to do is I pick up something, I just put it on eBay, and I'm good to go. But you have to kind of understand like there's a lot more tied into eBay. There's an algorithm, right? There's shipping, there's photos, there's being a top rated seller. All these things we're going to talk about later on today. But understand, right, that there's a search engine that plays a role in how your stuff sells. Just because you list it doesn't mean it's going to sell. Just because it's the bottom price does not mean it's going to sell. Just because it's something that you got really deep and you listed it very does not mean it's going to sell. Right? There's a lot. So you have to understand, right? There's a lot more that goes into reselling. This is why there's so many podcasts on reselling. We were the second one, actually. We were after Scavenger Life. But there's so many YouTubes out there, right? You can spend weeks on end, years on end just watching YouTube content on eBay. And the reason being is that there's a whole lot tied into it. It's not just as simple as finding quality stuff and listing. There's a whole lot that's involved. And so make sure that you understand that. Be careful, when you're sourcing, make sure it's a 90-day sell-through rate. Make sure that it's something that you're able to ship. All these things we talked about in past episodes. But I would say the number one thing is understanding there's a lot more involved than what you think, especially when you're brand new to reselling.
Yeah, I remember when I first started reselling, I listed a handful of items, and I got a couple that sold, and then I told you, I remember where I was driving, and I was like stopped at a red light, and I texted you, and I'm like, hey, I listed like 5 more items. I know I was texting and driving, but I listed like 5 more items today, and your response was like, good, the eBay algorithm likes when you're staying consistent, you're listing. And that was the first I heard that, and I was like, really? And I mean, I guess I understood the initial aspect, or like the basic foundation of like the more items you have in your store, obviously the more opportunities you have to connect with a buyer and sell an item. If you got 1 item, it's less likely to sell than if you've got 100 items. You're more likely to sell a item a day, right? So I understood that at a basic foundational level. But the idea that, wait a minute, eBay rewards activity, or eBay is rewarding certain things. And so, yeah, you're right. Like understanding that, we often talk about the algorithm, and we often talk about it as this ominous, like scary thing, but it's just a computer system, and every website, every system has some kind of algorithm. Even the stoplights that you stop at have an algorithm in place, right? That's just the way things run. And so when you understand that there are things that are going to be optimized and things that are going to bring your store down, the better you are going to be.
So there's a comment here I enjoyed. This comes from Raven Omega. Says there's really no competition in the resale world because most people don't want to scale their businesses to millions of dollars a year. Most are good with a few thousand or so a month. And you know what? That's very valid.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that argument. I remember when we first started doing the podcast, people were like, "Oh, you're going to kill yourselves. You're going to be sharing these bolos, and you're going to be sharing all these tips and tricks." And what we found out is like how many people actually take action, right, on what is being said. And how many people have actually scaled their businesses? Yeah,
and I guess that's a good clarifier too that Raven brought up there, is when we're talking about competition, like we're not thinking of like, hey, any of our listeners are going to become our direct competition, but more of in the sense of like on an independent basis, or like an individual item basis. So, hey, I just listed, I don't know, a horse saddle. Okay, I listed a horse saddle on eBay, and it's a certain brand, it's a certain whatever. And that's what I listed, and I look, and there's 10 other people with that same saddle listed. Now, those are my competitions for that item. Now, those sellers, I can go onto their eBay store and realize they're not my competition on any other item that I have listed. So it's not really in a sense of like, hey, these other people out there, but more of how can I make sure that my listing is the most optimized, that my store is the most optimized, so that every individual item has the best chance of selling.
No, agreed. So that kind of leads us to the idea of like, make sure that I don't know, I kind of have something written up here, pick battles you can win. I would say more of like, find what works for you, right? Stay in your lane. Because what happens with a lot of new sellers, right? You watch YouTube and they see somebody picking up certain items. They're like, that's what I'm going to do, right? And so they try to model and be just like that person. Now, I will tell you in the beginning, like before YouTube blew up, I remember I used to watch a few people on YouTube, and I would do exactly what they did, and it was successful. But eventually, right, as their subscriber count went up, as reselling became more popular, I began to realize that I need to just figure out what works for me, right? Because sometimes it's your geography, right? You can't source the same things that you watch people source on YouTube because, for example, some of the bigger YouTubers that do reselling content, they're in the Midwest or they're in the South. And I see some of the stuff they pick up, and I'm like, there's no way in San Diego or San Francisco I could come across that. It would take work. Like for me, it would take a lot of business cards. It would take a lot of connections for me to do that. Where you watch somebody in some of these, they go to a garage, just like, I went to a garage and I found vintage G.I. Joe in the garage and I paid, $50 for the collection. Right. And so it's kind of hard. Right. And, somebody here, again, Raven Omega says, I tried to model my store after Chris for Tekken Sports. And I would say to me, that's not a bad thing if you can maintain that level. Like I talk about Tekken Sports a few times, and, if that works for some, right, that's okay, right? Doing 250 or 300 listings, if you're able to do that before 9 a.m., like go for it. But I know Mike and I have always kept it real that as our life has changed, right? Whether it be more kids, whether it be relocating, whether it be a different job opportunity, we've decided that, hey, we're going to source the things that work for us. We're going to source the things that sell for us. And we're going to not get caught in this trap of like, oh man, I only know these kind of niches, but I'm going to go and buy out a whole garage of stuff I've never seen before. Like, I don't recommend that. I would rather have you source a bunch of items like on a small scale and then decide if you're going to go into that level.
Yep, that's good. I like this. Sanchez here said, Al G Rhythm is always watching. I think that's pretty funny. Yeah, so I like that idea of pick your battles. Know what's going to work for you. But I do think, like you mentioned, like especially when you're first starting out, I think it's actually a really good idea. I think imitation is one of the best forms of learning anything. You learn best by copying the masters. Right. And so you might start off by saying like, hey, this person that I follow, they're showing how to sell clothes. And so these are the brands they're talking about. I'm going to pick up the same brand. I'm going to list it the same way they list it. I'm going to ship in the same poly bag that they're shipping in. And that will teach you a ton of stuff. If you're just starting out, that's going to teach you how to ship. That's going to teach you listing best practices. It's going to teach you about pictures. And then as you do it, you're going to realize, you know what? I'm actually better with these other brands. Maybe it's not sportswear, but like, you know what? I've kind of branched off into another niche that I have more prevalent in my area, that I know a little bit better. That's maybe, not as competitive on eBay. So I think imitating is a good way of learning. And even learning new tips and tricks. But yeah, you've got to do what works for you. And that's why I said, like, I have a store that I think a lot of people probably on the podcast kind of know what the store is. And that's where I just throw like random things in. But I got another store that I don't share at all because I do have a couple of niches that I've been very successful in. And those are things I don't want people to know, right? Like I don't want people to find like my saved lists that I use on Facebook and that I'm constantly, doing eBay to eBay arbitrage on, because that is an area where I feel like I could get some competition in because I've locked those down as far as what I'm doing now that works. And so you got to figure out what that is for you. And you know what? it's crazy to think like this is going on 6 years for us, Orlando, doing this, or maybe it's over 6 years now. Yeah, it's going on 7 years. So I remember when I first started, I just felt like it was almost overwhelming. Like, how am I ever going to find my thing? Because I remember thinking that like in the first couple months, it's like, okay, what's my thing going to be? How am I going to find my thing? And over 7 years, it's like, I've got a bunch of my things now. And I've found a bunch of things that really work for me. And then, of course, there's just the random things I find at a garage. So, oh, look, a kitchen faucet. Like, it's new in box. I could sell this or whatever. So those things are fine. And all the skills I've learned reselling have helped me there. But yeah, it's going to come. Like, I think a lot of times, especially new people, they get impatient. But I bet you every single person who's watching and listening right now, if they've been doing this consistently over time, are like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, it wasn't until I was a couple years in and then I made this connection, or it was a couple years in and then I really discovered like, hey, this hobby that I have, there's ways I can make money because I know this niche really well. So yeah, pick your battles, know what you're looking for. So our next one here comes from, or the idea is to price smarter, not just cheaper.
You were getting ready for Hustle of the Week, weren't you?
No. I was trying to make sure this is the one because I had a story that I was going to give, but actually that kind of goes with the next one here. But price smarter, not just cheaper. So you want to make sure that you're not just thinking, hey, I want to be the cheapest listing, which could work. You're trying to go for that fast nickel. You're trying to sell things really, really fast. So you're willing to take a price cut. Maybe not make as much profit because you're just willing to move items. If you've got a good source, you just went to a Goodwill bins, you picked up 100 items for $50 or whatever, and you're willing to just sell these for half the price as everybody else, and you're still walking away with a profit, that could work. But a lot of times you need to be willing to do and think about other things, right? Do I have things like, have I looked at Terapeak? Do I understand what the price market fluctuation in this over time is? Maybe this isn't the right season to list this item and get top dollar. Maybe I'm willing to wait 2 months to list this item and not just have to be the cheapest, but get a little bit more out of my profit. So you got to really start to think of wisdom there, because yeah, a lot of times people are listing things in the wrong season. They list things too cheap, and that could even potentially be an opportunity for that like eBay to eBay arbitrage.
Yeah, and I'm always very big on, if you list things too cheap, right? Value proposition, like you've stated some of that, and it's idea of, I don't know, I myself, like, I will see things and I'm like, why is this so cheap? Like, I'd rather pay a little bit more. And I understand, like, if you have a lot of issues in your store, let's say you got the, downgrade from top rated seller. Let's say you have some negative feedback. Let's say you have other things that you may be the cheapest, but you still might not end up on the front page, right? All these other things are going to be important. So we'll talk about those here in a little bit, but understand your listing is everything. I would say your picture and your words are everything. That's how you're going to beat the competition. And somebody before had said, hey, people aren't willing to do as much to scale their store or to improve their store. And I would say that's true. And the same thing said with pictures. Like, I don't know how many pictures I've seen with people's toes in them, the background of their kitchen. Like, it just looks terrible. The toe ones are always the worst. Like, is that on purpose? Like, I'm not sure what's going on.
I had a baby hand in one of my one of the clothes pictures I had for a long time before I finally was like, wait a minute, is that my son's hand? Yeah, it was like in the corner of the picture. He was like reaching in. I didn't notice right away. So yeah, that does happen.
But just having good pictures, just doing, I mean, I know right now eBay has said white background removal isn't that big of a deal, but I still think it is. I think it
looks professional.
It gives a sense. It looks clean, right? It looks like, hey, my house isn't filled with junk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still convinced that certain items do fine with actually more of like in a realistic, like if you're trying to buy, I don't know, like a auto part something, or like a used tool for a car, and you're really into that stuff, and someone's got a picture of it on the floor in their garage, sometimes that gives buyer confidence, because it's like, hey, I'm buying from like an actual mechanic who's using this tool and not just like a random person who doesn't even know what this is. So for some people, certain items, not necessarily having that professional looking background, because some people are like, oh, this is just a reseller. Do they know? Can they answer my questions about this item? But overall, I think 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, that pure white background is going to definitely look more professional. And I'll give you an example, just in my own recent life on this. I talked about on the previous update episode that I'm planning on trying to sell my current house and purchase a new house. Well, we are using the same realtor that we used when we moved to Texas, and she is super professional. Like, that's one of the reasons we connected back up with her, and we're like, hey, would you be willing to help us with these transactions? Because she was super professional the first time, and we didn't have to list a house with her. She was just buying last time, but seeing her in the listing process, because we asked her on the phone, we're like, hey, this is the house we want to get. We're going to have to list our current house because it's got to be a contingent offer. I said, but what happens? Like, is there any fees with this? What happens if we decide to back out? And she's like, well, there's no fees, but let me explain. Like, I'm going to be paying a lot of money up front for your pictures and to get you the best possible listing. And she hired a professional photographer that came in, did incredible pictures. He came in and did a live tour of like a 3D where you can, move around the house. And I'm looking at all the comps in my area, and almost none of them have as high quality of pictures and don't have that 3D tour available. And so she's willing to put a lot of money up front, knowing that this is going to help her get the best price, because she makes money off of how much we sell the house for. She wants this house to sell too. And it was just that reminder of like, man, our listing in our neighborhood is the most competitive simply because of the pictures. They're such a good quality. And the same thing is true with any item. If you've got a really good listing, it's going to make you're going to have a much better chance of doing well.
Okay, I need to address some of the comments here before we move forward. We got Wayne K-Way Shop saying, I charge a bit extra if my toes are in the photos. All right. Well, hey,
there's a market for that.
There's a reason why Wayne is one of the top reselling YouTubes out there right now.
Now we know the secret.
We got Principio Sanchez. There's a YouTuber I watch who does daily sales videos. His feet and toes are in every one. Ay Dios mío, I keep my ugly talons covered 24/7. Good for you. Oh, these are too good. All right, now
Okay,
Daniel,
real quick,
just,
I want to bring up this one too. So this is a comment we get a
Oh,
lot. I think
man.
from the same person here. I'm not going to go into this a lot, but I don't want this person to think that we just ignore them. So we got KB24 here saying, "Are we going into a recession?" Man, I don't even know what they're defining a recession as anymore. I know we were in one according to the old definition for a while with a couple of quarters of GDP decline and no growth. But the reality is, I'm at a point where like I don't care about just like green line go up, fake GDP go up. You know what I mean? It's honestly, as a reseller, I'm going to make money either way. What I care about is long-term health of our country. And if the media starts calling a recession, it's not going to change anything I'm doing. In fact, I'm probably going to resell even harder. So it's very possible they might say recession, but I'm experiencing better right now. So I don't know. Everybody's experiences are different.
Now, there's a serious thing here before we get way off track. So, Daniel, this is interesting. I did not know this. Daniel Baus from Facebook says, do you see AI innovating the listing process and getting instant sell through rate results by snapping a pic? You know, there's a lot of talk. I know AI is definitely something that eBay is working, and we've talked about on the podcast before how they're looking to do where you take a picture and it fills in all the item specifics and gets everything ready. I am concerned. I've shared this before where sell similar seems to be better in the sense that sell similar, like you end up looking for the most expensive sold of your item and you look at the keywords and I steal that sell similar. But if there's an ability for AI to be able to give you instant sell through rate, that would be a game changer.
Maybe,
you know,
but would it be? Because again, like part of this episode is that idea of I love that phrase that we stole, the unfair advantage. And I just think back to when I was going to remove .bg one at a time, removing backgrounds and then copying, pasting thumbnails, like basically screenshotting the thumbnails that were coming off and using those as my listings. And at that point, nobody was removing backgrounds, and only like people with the most professional setups had the near infinite white background. People could have a photo booth, but even then you could tell a lot of times it's in a photo booth. It doesn't look like a removed background, perfect infinite white back. I was doing that, nobody else was, and then it's like, oh man, this saves so much time now that I can just remove the background with the click of a button. But now everybody does that, and you lose that unfair advantage, and so then you got to find more ways to be even more competitive than anybody else. So would it save time to see sell-through rate? Absolutely, would save a ton of time. But if you're one of the people willing to put in that work to figure out sell-through rate and nobody else is, you're going to have that unfair advantage. Your store is going to be more successful than other people. So it's a trade-off. Like what's more valuable, your time or being more successful than your competition? One of those two is going to end up being more profitable. It's just dependent on which one it is. I mean, it's hard to say.
I don't know, a lot of people might disagree with me and don't want to hear this, but I would say if your item specifics are different than others, I think that gives you an edge over the competition, right? Maybe they're in the wrong category. Maybe they don't have certain things on there that they need to have, like, you know, what team it represents if you're doing apparel, or when it comes to toys, you know, what years, whatever, right? Because keywords are everything, and eBay has very much been big about the item specific. So if you want to beat the competition, do what eBay tells you is working. So this next one, shipping. This one is an easy one for me in the sense that I see this all the time. Like when I buy stuff from eBay, people take forever to ship stuff, right? And not only do they take forever to ship stuff, people will end up shipping things as slow as possible because they're trying to save that money. And that's fine. That's your model. That's okay. But I can't tell you how many times I bought something and I bought it because I was fully dependent on the idea that they were going to get it to me in time, right? So, for example, I had people like this last time. I had to get some books for my son for college, and I needed those books to get here in a week. I had people that were selling them, like in Kentucky and Maryland, whatever, but they had like media mail. So I knew it was going to take me like 2 weeks to get those books. But then I found people in California that were shipping priority and knew I would get those within 2 or 3 days. So guess what? I went with those people. Right? Even though it cost me a little bit more, the peace of mind caused me to purchase from those individuals. And that happens time and time again. I think, let us know in the comments. I'm sure many people know that the idea that most resellers on eBay are terrible about shipping. I don't know. Have you had that experience, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the majority of resellers are terrible at it, because I mean, a lot of the things I buy, maybe it's just in the categories I'm buying, I feel like people are pretty quick with shipping. If it's like eBay to eBay arbitrage I'm doing and I'm buying something at a discounted price, that tends to be part of it, is that they don't have the shipping down as well. And which is one of the reasons why their price is low, is they're just not 100% sure what they're doing. But I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit skewed because I'm only seeing those two ends. I'm seeing the people where I'm basically buying a discounted item because they've underpriced it. Maybe their shipping's really bad. Maybe their photos are really bad. Maybe they have bad keywords. Maybe they're spelled something wrong, right? So that's that end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum is I've bought a lot of, like, from not just resellers, but big reselling stores, like entire companies and organizations, like when I bought computers or I buy certain cards or things like that. So they've got that down. The other people don't. I would say most people in the middle probably have a decent understanding of shipping. I still think you can squeak out a little bit of that unfair advantage on there if maybe your shipping prices are lower. Speed, I think, is important. Price, I think, is a little bit more important. Things like free shipping with the price built in, like your shipping cost kind of built in, could even be more competitive sometimes because some people see free shipping, and even though the total price they're going to pay ends up being the same, that free shipping can be for some people a like that thing that pushes them over to click your listing. I don't do free shipping anymore on most items. So it just really depends. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, I think I see it the other way. Like I can tell you how many times I look through and scroll through and even have people ship things out to me, and I'm like, man, if they just change things. Like, for example, Kevin here says, I turned my eBay into a store and lowered my handling time to 1 day and raised my sales overnight. And that's the thing. Like, people don't want to wait. Like, waiting 3 days, 4 days is just obnoxious, just kind of crazy. So if you want to beat that competition, all you have to do is, like, yeah, if you just go 1 day handling, like, that's not terrible, right? That's not terrible. Or if, I have same day shipping still, which is kind of killing me. And here's something I like what Rhythm J says. I'm located in Texas, so even if I'm late shipping an item by a day, it'll still arrive to the customer within 3 to 4 business days. I'd assume that isn't the case shipping from California to New York. You know what? That's a good point. But I've done that sometimes. Like, I've printed the shipping label and, like, things got busy and I couldn't ship it out. I'm just being real. And I'll ship it out the next day and things still get in time because eBay gives me that window. Right. And so, like Raven here says, you got to ship daily if you want to make daily sales. And I agree with that. That's one of the reasons I've kept my same day shipping, even though it's been really hard. And even though sometimes I've been late, right, I've made sure to keep myself in a good place so I do not lose my top rated seller badge. But before we move on, I know some people are kind of, stressed. They're like, oh, I went and did my taxes and it was a lot of work. Like, I had to find all my mileage. I had to figure out all my eBay fees and my shipping fees and everything. There is one source out there that can help you that's made by resellers for resellers, and that is My Reseller Genie. So if you're looking for bookkeeping software that will keep you motivated, keep you going, make sure to sign up for My Reseller Genie. Use our link below and use our code Pure Hustle. You'll get 15% off the first month. That's Pure Hustle. You'll get 15% off the first month. So make sure that you're checking out My Reseller Genie. All right, this next one's going to cause a little controversy. What do you think about this one, Mike?
Are you on read? Okay. So use promoted listings wisely. So you got here, start with a low ad rate, understand standard versus advanced, and watch fee changes. Yeah, I think, you've got to use promoted listings wisely. I am under the belief that promoted listings, like if you're going to sell an item for $20, and then you're willing to run a sale, let's say, and sell it for $18, or you're willing to take an offer and sell the item for $18, you're almost better off running that value on promoted listings because that's more eBay's going to get. eBay's going to benefit more from promoted listing, that $2 if they get the fee, versus you just cut the fee by $2 on a sale, versus you just are the lowest price by $2. eBay is going to reward where they make their money, because where do they make their money? Like we talk time and time again, eBay's profit comes from fees, right? That's where they're making their money. And so I believe the algorithm is going to prioritize fees. So you say start with a low ad rate. I think it's fair to say you don't want to have higher. Like if you can run it for like 5% and be just as effective, because there is going to be there's the law of diminishing returns, right? Like you can have a 5% ad rate and maybe see a 25% increase in your sell-through rate on certain category. you could bump that up to 10%. You're not necessarily going to see a 50% increase. You might only be making 28% higher. So now you've got an extra 5% for an extra 2% increase in your sell-through rate. So I do think you got to find that sweet spot, right? There is going to be a law of diminishing return, because having a high promoted listing, a high ad rate, is not going to increase the demand, because that's the big part, right? It's demand for the item. That's what's going to drive an item selling. And so you could basically have 50% ad rate, but if there's no demand for that item, it's not going to help you at all. So you might be just as successful with a 3% ad rate as you would be with a 50% promoted listing ad rate. So yeah, I'd say you got to find that sweet spot, and you're only going to know by fluctuating and just kind of figuring out how much do I have to increase it by. So you don't want to start at the absolute highest. I often think you don't want to even start where they're suggested is. You kind of want to, I typically start a little bit lower than that. And then if items aren't selling, I'll bump that up. And I typically bump that up a little bit before I start running sales on items, just because, like I said, I think eBay prioritizes that.
Yeah, agreed. Raven here asks, do you guys sell on Poshmark? And if so, are you using the promoted closet feature? So I do sell on Poshmark, but I do not use the feature. The reason being is I don't get enough sales from Poshmark for me to think it's worth it to me. Now, I do a lot of cross posting. I use Vendoo. If you guys haven't heard of Vendoo, you actually can use our code Pure Hustle. I think you get like 25% off or like a nice discount for the month. But I would say you just got to be careful, right, with promoted listings, especially once you start it. I don't think you can get back from it, right? You got to keep it. But I would say a lot of resellers don't even know what promoted listings are, or the everyday person is not going to use it, right? So you got to make sure that you end up, finding what works for you. You got to be careful. Now, I think above all,
I actually like this one real quick. Yeah. So KB24 said, I think this is a pretty decent strategy here. Says, what I do is I set a very high ad rate, and once I get watchers, I revise to 0% and send offers to the watchers. I'm not sure, because I know there's a certain point where, like, if they click on the listing from an ad, and then I don't know what the number of days is if they end up buying that item after their initial click was from that, you still get charged the fee. But yeah, I'm assuming if it's probably been a couple of days since they've originally clicked on the item with the ad rate, or with that higher ad rate, then lowering it down to 0 could definitely work with that, because then you get the opportunity to send offers to watchers. I think that's probably could be very successful. I think you might lose out some opportunity to get more watchers or to find that person, because if you're sending an offer, you're taking a deal anyways, right? Like, you might be selling it for $5 or $10 off. So it might have been better to have kept it at the exact same price rate with just a $4 or $5 offer or ad,
All right, so Big Dre has a question here about promoted listings, and then I want to move to our next thing here. So maybe you guys can answer my question. Hey, by the way, what's going on, Big Dre? Glad you're always on our live, so glad to see you. Maybe you guys can answer my question. If you delist, relist, will that restart the promoted fee? Same with delist, so similar. The promoted listing fee stop after 30 days. So for me, it does, but that's because I have a general blanket. Like, I have it set. I have it crazy. I don't have any cap on my promoted listings. I forget what it's called, but I have a dynamic ad rate. And so anything I list already goes under that dynamic ad rate. But I do believe when you do the sell similar, if you already have promoted listings on there, it'll keep it. It'll be there. So I haven't had any of my stuff stop after 30 days. You can actually change it, and you can set up your promotion if you want it to go 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 30 days, 90 days. That's what you need to do. So for me, I am very much I use the dynamic ad rate, and everybody agrees. But if you want to hear our older episodes, basically what ended up happening was I was using it, and then somebody from eBay was like, "Oh, you don't need to. You should go flat 15," and it killed my sales. It was like flat 5%. That's what it was. It killed my sales. So be aware of that. Now, this next one, this will help you beat the competition. And somebody in our Discord right now has been struggling because they actually lost their top rated seller, and they understood how valuable it was, right? And so top rated seller, what it does, it gives you a badge, right? You get that badge, you're like, oh, who cares about the badge? But I got to tell you, it does matter to people, right? Like, if you have a badge, people are more willing to click through. It also puts you higher in the search, right? And so people are looking for stuff. It also gives you discounts.
Yep.
Right? So you're able to be more competitive with your shipping. It gives you like sometimes you get like a 67% discount on FedEx or UPS. So I would say of all the things we've just talked about, this may be one of the most important things is getting yourself to a place that you become a top rated seller, because top rated seller puts you high in the algorithm. Top rated seller allows people to see that you're different than others, gives you those discounts. You also get some of your final value fees out. It gives you a huge search boost. So if you want to beat the competition, aim for that. I've seen people on YouTube say, "Oh, it's no big deal." No, I 100% disagree. The advantage is far away. I mean, what is the disadvantage? You have to work harder. I'm not really sure. Like, why not get the top rated seller badge? Disagree on any of that, Mike?
No, I mean, I think it's if you're like a really part-time seller, you're selling, maybe a couple of items a month, probably doesn't make a big difference. I mean, you're probably not going to see a huge impact, but again, it scales, right? So if you change that 2 to 3 items a month to 100 items a month that you're selling, the amount you're losing is much more significant. It's going to be a much larger percentage of your income. So, yeah, I think that it is definitely the more serious you are as a reseller, just like scaling anything, the more important those things are going to become. So I would say, like, if you're a brand new reseller and you've got a store with like 100 items in it and you're selling, 5 items a month, I would say don't kill yourself to try and get that and keep that top rated, because maybe it's saving you $10 a year. Maybe it's making you an extra $50 a year. So it might not be worth it. But if you've got, closer to 1,000 items, you're selling a lot, it makes more of a difference, right? In the same way we talk about things like a light booth, right? Like getting a nice photo set up for your pictures. Is that useful? Absolutely. It can make you, it could put you above everybody else. But if you're brand new, that's probably lower on the list of priorities. But once you scale, it's like it's almost unacceptable not to have a setup, So I think that's probably where I land on that, is that top rated seller is going to be very, very beneficial for probably the vast majority of our listeners. But if you're brand new, don't think like, if I don't get top rated seller, like I'm basically losing so much money on eBay. It's not that significant if you're not selling a lot. So I would say don't stress in the beginning, but as you take reselling more seriously, if you are a top rated seller and you're selling a lot of items and you lose that will have a huge impact on your store, and you have every right to be upset and every right to do everything you can to reacquire that top rated seller.
No, agreed. 100% agreed. All right. I think we should take a little break and get into a little hustle of the week here. You good with that?
Let's do it. Let me pull it up here. Da-da-da-da.
Come on, hustlers. It's the freaking hustle of the week.
Yeah, hustle of the week. All right, our first one comes from, gotta just, I need to start getting this bigger font before we get started, because my eyes, man, I'm telling you. All right, so our first one comes from Patrick. It's a Gmail here. It says, here is my hustle of the week. Sometimes you just have to keep relisting an item until it sells. I finally sold this Boy Scouts vintage 1920s Eisner jacket with patches. I bought it for $5 at a thrift store and sold it for $1,125. I didn't really have an opportunity to do the research of what it was in the store, but it looked old and I figured I couldn't lose money. But it took 4 years to sell, and I had my doubts that I would find the right buyer. This just proves that sometimes you have to believe in your listing. Have faith. Man, that's fantastic. So it was a Boy Scouts Eisner Leader Norfolk jacket. It had patches, 4-pocket open collar. Yes, I mean, Boy Scouts, especially vintage stuff, that's a bolo. That's pretty awesome. And man, to go for over $1,000 for something you bought for $5, that's the kind of hustle. That's not just a hustle of the week, but that's the kind of thing that you're going to be telling stories about for the rest of your reselling career. There was one time I was at a thrift store and I found this Boy Scout jacket, right? So man, that is fantastic.
It is. To me, it's one of those things where like that always keeps you motivated, right? Because you need those grails, right? Those grails need to show up, because if you don't get those grails every once in a while, you're just kind of like, oh man, like I'm watching everybody else get grails and why me? And then you kind of feel a little defeated. So when you get those W's, like it's definitely worth it. All right. This is also from our Discord. Well, this is not from Discord. The other one was from Gmail. This one's from our Discord. It's from Salad Toss, repeat hustle of the week. But I wanted to share this one because I didn't know this was a thing. So paid $20 at the thrift, sold within 2 days of listing. And I share this and I'm like, what is going on? and it was an Epson Perfection V750 Pro flatbed photo scanner. And I'm like, what? Like those things are money now? I did like remember the scanners like back in the day? You know, the youngsters on our podcast don't remember, but back in the day, it wasn't like you could take your phone and you could like make things in PDFs, or like, you know, you actually had to like have a full huge scanner to be able to get anything. And so be able to pick one up for $20 within 2 days, sell it for $400 plus shipping. Well done, sell itself. So keep an eye. Maybe those flatbed scanners, maybe it's becoming a thing. So not saying, you know, look everything up, but maybe it's worth every once in a while going, I wonder what this flatbed scanner is worth. Because honestly, I will tell you, I've been outsourcing, and when I've been sourcing, I've not seen many of those. So maybe it's because of scarcity, not sure, but nice work there. Sell it sauce.
That's fantastic. All right, our next one comes from Don, which is the Salty Thrifter SD on Instagram. He says, "What's up, gentlemen? Orlando, I know you are not a huge fan of Goodwill, but I have to say I've been finding some bangers here in San Diego lately. Recently, I found 2 7-inch plastic lures by a company out of Murrieta, California called 86 Baits. I gave them a quick look up and was shocked by the resale value of these lures. I paid $3.99 each and recently sold both lures for $249.99 each for a total of $500 on an $8 score. Keep up the good work, boys. See you on the next hustle." Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine fish. I mean, I fish a little bit. I'm no like avid angler or anything, but I lose my lures and I lose my hooks all the time. I cannot imagine what it would feel like to lose a $250 lure. It's like gets tangled up in the bushes, man. I'd be swimming. I'd be jumping in after it. That is crazy that people are spending that kind of money. I mean, it's a 7-inch plastic lure, so you're catching big fish. Maybe it's like some deep sea lures there, but man, that's crazy. 86 Baits. That goes to show like you can be in a niche, right? Like your niche might be fishing lures, because fishing equipment is very valuable if you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, so I saw that, and again, all these hustle of the weeks are great, right? They're just, man, keeps motivated. All right, Mike, what is your hustle of the week?
So I know you've actually been doing pretty successful, or you've been pretty successful with manga, which is crazy because I feel like I introduced you in some ways to manga. I was selling manga pretty early on in the podcast, and I think you've surpassed me on the manga selling at this point. But it's funny because one of the manga that you had mentioned, because I've sold a lot of like really niche stuff, some things that are like really unique, not like the normal like Naruto or whatever, like the super popular stuff, but some of the more unique ones is what I've been most successful with. But I know that you talked about picking up and selling some One Piece manga, and you know, One Piece came out with the movie, and so it was really hot for a little while, but One Piece is still really hot. It's like the longest running anime of all time, and so it has a huge cult following. And I was able to pick up, I think it was like 23 or 24 books, and most of them are in sequence. For some reason, I still don't quite understand how people like can handle it, but a lot of times when I buy manga, it's like they've got number 16, 17, 18, 23, 24, 27, 32, and it's just like, how did you not decide like I've just got to buy that one I'm missing? Like, how do you skip a couple? That's like skipping like 3 episodes in a series you're watching and being like, whatever, I guess I just will figure out as I'm watching what I missed. So but even with that, I still think because this was a Facebook marketplace, like local deal pickup, picked it up for about $25, which is a pretty killer deal for over 20 manga. And I think I'll be able to sell these by the time it's all said and done for a little over $100. So yeah, pretty awesome.
Nice. All right. Hey, I do want to share a hustle of the week from one of our comments here from one of our watchers, and then I'll share mine. This is from Kevin Ford over on Facebook. Says, I picked up a free table and chest of drawers on Nextdoor. The chest was a Drexel, very high end. I listed it and it sold the next day for $320. 50% of my sales come from free items. Okay. Can't beat that, Kevin. Nice work there. Yeah, Nextdoor app, I got to tell you, it is a good app. Like if you're willing to deal with, you know, all the people just complaining on there. Like if you go to Sold,
that's just entertainment. That's just entertainment.
Sometimes it is. The other, you know, the app I have right now on my app, what is it called? The Citizens app, I think it's called. Yes, the Citizen app. That one. So now that I live in the city, somebody told me to download it, and it basically gives you anytime like there's some kind of crime happening nearby, Oh my goodness, man.
You don't want to know. I turned that off my Ring, so I've got Ring cameras, and my wife and I, even before we moved out here, we set up our Ring cameras on our house, and we had like neighborhood notifications on, and every time it was like, oh, there's like a shooting or a break-in or whatever, and it's like showing you where it's happening in the town. I'm like, I've got to turn this off. I don't want to know. This just makes me feel like this is unsafe, you know. And it's like, really, you are safe for the most part if you're not. My whole philosophy is if you're not involved in that kind of life, your chances of a just random attack of violence or even theft is relatively rare. But man, yeah, when you're following like those types of citizen apps or like a neighborhood watch type app or even the Ring camera apps, it can be almost overwhelming and very blackpilling of like, man, how is all this stuff happening? I used to listen to a police scanner. I sold my police scanner on eBay. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I used to listen to a police scanner when most of the police stations weren't digital. A lot of them are moving to digital, but back when they were, not trunked or whatever, you could just use and they're not cheap. That's another bolo. It's a free bolo for y'all. Police scanners. They're super, super hot.
There you go. All right. Nice work there, Kevin. So my hustle of the week. So Kentucky Derby just passed, and I ended up picking up a vintage shirt at a garage sale last year for like 25 cents. And it was one of those vintage shirts. I don't know if you've seen them where it's like a newspaper has been like pressed onto the shirt. Like it's like a Gildan shirt or something. So this one, yeah, it was a Gildan Ultra Cotton shirt. And it said Kentucky Derby 131, long shot, Giacomo hits the jackpot. And it was just like this newspaper article was printed on it. Paid 25 cents and I ended up selling it for $54. So I'll take that. I don't know. That's better crypto game. That's better than the crypto 100x. Okay, well, maybe. Yeah, it is. It's better than crypto 100x. So I always say if you ever see some of those vintage shirts that have like the newspaper print, it's always worth picking up. I've picked up stuff that has like Padre stuff. I've picked up stuff that have Charger stuff. Like I end up always selling those. So it's really good. So check those out. All right, hey, somebody here says something about manga. Says this from Zeke Badro says my son will check out manga from the library. He'll check out all they have for a series. He'll wait for the missing books to check in before he reads the others. Well, that's good. But the beauty of it is the people that I sell to, they're just like, I needed 4, I needed 5, right? I needed 7. Like, I'm not sure how that happens. Now, some of them are discontinued books. Some of them are books that you can't get in the States. So this is why I end up like when I can pick up a ton of manga, I will, because even if they're out of order, even if I'm missing some of the books, it is still worth the pickup. Hey, everyone, thank you for sharing with us your hustle of the week. If you're ever wondering how to share those with us, the best way is through our email, puresoulpodcast@gmail.com. If you follow us on social media, we are PureSoulCast on Twitter, X, as you would know it now. We are Pure Soul Podcast on all other platforms. Also, grateful for all of you that listen to us on Spotify or iTunes. But grateful if you come over, right? If you've never seen our faces, it would really help us out if you come over and hit that subscribe button. We're hoping to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the year on YouTube. That would definitely help us out. I think that's when we're going to start doing merch drops and all that good stuff. So check us out. And as always, if you ever want to leave us an iTunes review, it helps us out, especially if you list why you listen to podcasts. It's always great. We are the most reviewed reselling podcast out there. We are the most listened to reselling podcast out there. And I do believe it's because people leave us great ratings. This is from, I'm going to read one of them. This is from Kenzo 6700. This past April said, been listening since the beginning. So awesome. Says, can't wait for the next podcast. I really enjoyed the book reviews. There you go. We just talked about book reviews. Wish you could do more of them. You never know. We may be coming back with those. And you may have heard us talking about our Discord. So our Discord is pretty easy to access. You just have to be one of our Patreon supporters. That is probably the cheapest Patreon out there outside of free. For $5.55 a month, you can go to patreon.com/PureSoulPodcast or go to the link below and you can sign up. And that allows us to continue sharing free material, which we've always been free in our podcast from day one. And allows you to be part of the Pure Hustle community where we have all kinds of different resellers, all kinds of tips and tricks. And for $5.55 months, guaranteed, you're going to be able to make that money back pretty quick. So check us out there on our Patreon. All right, Mike, let's close out a little bit here. So this one, beating out the competition, a lot of people don't think about this. And it's the idea that you can turn somebody right from a one-time buyer into a repeat fan. Now, I don't know if fan's the right word, maybe a repeat buyer. But for example, recently this last month, I sold 2 vintage charger hats for $50 a piece, and I paid 25 cents for each of those. Well, now, why was I able to do that? I think number one is I shipped quickly, and the person was happy about that. 2, I shipped the vintage hat in a box, right? It wasn't in a poly mailer. And number 3, I do offer coupons every once in a while, right? Or I end up offering something lower, right? I send an offer, and it's, maybe it's $5 off, $10 off, or whatever it may be. But stuff like that allows you to continue driving traffic. Now, you could do other things like a whatnot show, or you could have a following on Instagram or TikTok, and you can kind of convert that into more sales that are repeat sales. But I would say overall, if you just provide great customer service, if people reach out to you and you have a conversation about the item, or you let them know that you have other items, like, you're going to be able to beat the competition, because a lot of people don't like being bothered on eBay. I personally don't like being bothered, but I'm willing to react, because I'm like, hey, if I can convert somebody into being someone that always is buying from me, I'm willing to do it. I kind of lost you. I can't hear you on the audio there, Mike.
Oh, I'm back. Okay,
sure.
sorry.
Oh, there you go.
That's like, somebody said in our comments earlier, talking about like they had their own niche store that was pretty new, and so it hasn't got top rated seller yet. And that can be where it's useful to have a separate niche store, because, I consider my store a garage sale store, right? Like, all the stuff that's in here is stuff you'd find at thrift stores and garage sales. It's a little bit of a mix of everything. It's unlikely that I'm going to have a lot of repeat buyers unless like I get a big haul of something. There was like a time when I had like a ton of RPG books, and I had like, 100 different listings in this one RPG type of various types of books and accessories for it. So I had tons of repeat buyers for those items. But if you're like wanting to niche down, like, hey, I'm going to have my own manga store, and I want to start building manga, and I'm going to have 500 manga items listed, and I'm going to consistently list here, it's a little bit easier to make some cheap business cards, throw them in when you sell manga, and then add, put in there a coupon, like 20% off your next order at my store, right? Because then somebody who's buying manga is going to be more willing to go and buy more manga. But if you only have like, hey, I only have one manga set in my store, I just sold that manga set to somebody, and I left them a coupon, and they come to my store and they're like kitchen faucets and like an old iPad and like random like shoes. They're like, no, thank you, right? So you're more likely to be able to get, I think, those repeat buyers if you've got a niche down store. And so sure. I think that's one of those areas where if you do have a niche down store, maybe it's a second or third store of yours, I think it is worthwhile to kind of market yourself a little bit. Marketing is everything. And then you can even do those things like you mentioned, like having the TikTok or having an Instagram account that's just for that store, because then you can comment on in the community. Like I said, I've gotten into ham radio. So if you're on Facebook groups for ham radio and you're listing your stuff, and they see your store and it's just ham radio stuff, you're more likely to be able to get those repeat buyers and drive traffic to your store that's actually going to convert into multiple sales, and not just maybe, hey, here's one random item I have listed. Because you want to target, it's like the same thing with anything. Like when you've got when you're watching or listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube, if you're watching a YouTube on, I don't know, like some kind of medical equipment and how to use it, all the advertisements that are going to show up on that YouTube, like that you're watching, is going to be about medical stuff, because they're targeting that audience. They're not going to be showing like random car videos as their advertisements, because those types of ads, they want to specifically target their audience. And so it doesn't really make sense to try and spend a lot of money and time in marketing if you don't have something that I can specifically target the audience that's going to be purchasing the type of item I'm selling.
Yeah, agreed. All right, a couple other items here. So sometimes people don't think about this, but it's good to just review what you've been doing, right? What can I kind of end it here with this last one, right? Because sometimes with reselling, you go, right? And so maybe you don't do an inventory check. So maybe there's a lot of inventory that you probably need to relist, or maybe there's some listings that you need to go in and you need to tweak the price or change the pictures or change your customer service. Okay, maybe there's times that you need to go on Terapeak and you need to take a look at the selling history of the kind of items that you sourced. Sometimes you need to just do a flash sale and just sell a bunch of stuff. I would say that beats the competition. The reason that does successfully beat the competition is because a lot of people don't do that, right? I myself was lazy for a long time. Like, I refused to do any of that. I would just list and forget it, and I would just have a bunch of stuff on my store that would keep my store stale. But resellers that do really well, like I know some that have systems that like, hey, after a certain amount of time, I'll go down 10%, another 20%, 30% eventually to just get that out of my store, right? To trigger the algorithm, keep things moving. But take the time to reflect on your business, right? Because as much as I've said for years, one of the things I never wanted eBay to become as a business, I just wanted it to be a hobby. It did become a business. I had to be real about it, right? I did have to evaluate sourcing. I had to evaluate my listings. I had to, ponder, okay, what can I do better? And I had to go back to my store. I had to do inventory checks, all those different things. And all those different things made me a better reseller. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're only going to improve whatever you're measuring and tracking and reflecting on. Like that's it. I mean, you might accidentally improve in areas, but if you do, it's mostly accidental, right? But if you're keeping track of how much have I spent, and I've seen it in our comments even today, someone talking about how much they spent in a store on promoted listings, dollar amount, how much they spent on shipping, a dollar amount. Like if you know that, and you could say like, hey, this month or this quarter, I had 10% more expenses on shipping supplies than I did the previous quarter, but I had 5% less fees on my promoted list, and you actually have those numbers, then you know how to adjust your store. Those micro adjustments you can squeeze out for huge profit, or just to know like, hey, this is a dead market. I need to shift out of this one and move into this one. If you're just kind of like, I don't know, I think my store is doing good, I made money, like you might be getting the success you want. You might just be like, hey, I'm making ends meet. But if you truly want to improve and beat your competition, you've got to measure things, and you've got to reflect on what you're measuring, and you got to make adjustments, right? And the only way you can really reflect and not just be like, well, how much are you spending on gas and inventory? You're like, I don't know, like I fill up a couple times so if that's where you're at, you're not going to be able to truly improve. Like you need to know those numbers.
No, agreed. And again, you're just doing something that the competition won't do, and it's changing, right, your store and making you a better reseller. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully everything that we shared with you today, maybe you got something from it. Maybe it was just a quick review. Maybe it was a quick reminder for everyone. But, we all are in our own lanes and reselling. But in the end, I think these principles are universal. So hopefully this helped many of you out. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. Thank you for all of you that smashed that like button, for all the comments. Appreciate all your support. And with that being said, make sure to be real.
Be relevant.
And be reselling late.
Peace.